Welcome in to the CryptoBroz podcast. Nice. I am the CryptoBullGod.
And I am the CryptoBringer.
And this is the recorded on March 23rd, 2022 CryptoBroz podcast. You can find me on Twitter, YouTube, TradingView, and Instagram. Where can they find you, CryptoBringer?
You can find me on Twitter and Pornhub at CryptoBringer.
You know somebody's going to search for that. You do realize?
Well, that's going to get real interesting.
Out of morbid curiosity, I even now want to search that.
Well, you know what? What the hell? I'm going to search it too. We're all going to search it. Let's get CryptoBringer to the top in the Pornhub searches, people.
All right. So, something I wanted to share with you this past week that I did, this will actually bring back memories from like way back. We've done chip and putt before, and I've gone to driving ranges plenty of times. But I did my first full round of golf on this past Sunday, and I got to tell you, it was a lot of fun. It was definitely a lot of fun. Have you ever done a full range before, full course?
No, I've only ever done chip and putt or mini golf, but I just have this mental image in my head of you golfing and not having been out on a golf course before, and I don't see it going well. I could be wrong. You are gifted in athletics. However,
I gotta tell you. So, it actually went pretty well, and I'm not just saying that. The first hole, so I went with the same friend, my friend Kevin, who got me the Bitcoin bottle of wine that I tweeted about. So he actually does a little bit of golfing, knows a thing or two. So we started practicing. We got a couple of balls, and I was driving the ball with like a 9-iron and a pitching wedge and a 3-iron and all this stuff. So I was definitely warming up for a bit. But the first hole didn't go so well. So we scratched that. But holes like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I actually got one hole where it was a par 4, and I made par. I made a decent putt. Yeah, I made a decent putt.
Wow.
But then what happened was, by the time we got 2 beers in, okay,
Wait.
and I also, yes, by the time we got 2 beers in, and these were legit beers, and I did not eat enough before I left, the game started going a little south. It wasn't awful, but it started to dip off.
So your first time golfing, you did it right. You had alcohol with you. What you said these were real beers. So
yeah.
What were the real beers? And I'm doing air quotes with my fingers that you can of course see.
I don't remember the name. They were IPAs. They were 7% or 7.5%.
You drink IPAs?
Yeah, I drink IPAs. My taste change over time. Yeah, I drink
folks,
IPAs.
this is not CBG. This is not CBG. He was the littlest bitch when it came to IPAs before, and now all of a sudden he's drinking 7%ers. Okay,
CBG. What would you like? May I have a Sauvignon Blanc?
Well, and that gets me onto this. What are you drinking right now?
I'm just having a lime with a bubbly lime and some vodka. That's what I got
all right.
going on. Yeah.
Well, cheers. And
Cheers.
I am having a Diet A&W with whatever the hell that healthy ice cream is, because I really wanted a root beer float.
Holy shit, you're having a root beer
Halo
float?
Top.
Wow,
yeah,
nice.
It's Halo
Very
Top
nice.
Vanilla that the Crypto Babe picked up for me, and Diet A&W.
And whipped cream vodka?
Nope, nothing. There's no alcohol in here whatsoever, actually.
Wow, this podcast might actually go well.
It might, but don't worry, I'm still using the metal straw, but it's in a tin mug, so it doesn't really clang.
By the way, that metal straw is so infamous at this point. It's a shame that you don't have it. It's really, I'm encouraging you to drink, by the way, if you haven't noticed.
Yeah, you are.
But I was going to say, the golfing went so well. We had so much fun that guess what? We're doing it again on Sunday. So 3 p.m. tee time. It's a little bit cheaper. Weather's supposed to be very favorable.
Because you're going to roast.
No. South Florida on Sunday, the humidity's dropping off. It's going to be 76. So it should be beautiful. And by the time 3, 4, 5, 6 o'clock, it should dip down into the high 60s, low 70s. So, but yeah, looking forward to it. It was a great time, and it went pretty well. It really did. It went pretty well. There was one funny shot that I had. Well, there were two funny shots I can remember, but the one I had was off the tee, shot it, meant to drive it straight, definitely veered off to the right, and definitely hit a condominium. Definitely. Thankfully didn't shatter a window, but heard the doink. And I was like, these homes are a little too close.
All my shots go to the right, so it doesn't matter. I mean, I can hit that damn thing far, but they all go to the right. That's, it's kind of the way, I guess. Well, never mind.
So you had a request for me on this TA update. Which token did you want me to chart and talk about real quick?
Tell me about shitcoin. And that's ticker symbol SHT all. Anyway, Solana, SOL.
Yeah, so Solana obviously is a real popular project, and I quick charted this one out before we got on, spent about 5 minutes looking at it. For somebody who's been charting for a while, it doesn't take long. I probably spent less than 5 minutes. It doesn't take long to sort of create a story. So a couple things to point out here in Solana. We had this huge run up to an all-time high at 260. Okay, what people forget, I actually just saw a tweet about this today that made me think of this, but what people forget is what we saw in 2017 is what we're seeing now. I mean, Ethereum corrected by 70-some% in the middle of a bull run, not a crypto winter. So Solana has corrected roughly by the same amount. I drew it up earlier. It was like 72 or 73%. So nothing that's out of the norm of what we've seen in prior cycles, or at least in the prior cycle. The other thing that I'm seeing in this chart, which is good to see, and I've seen it in a lot of other charts that I'm charting, like Quant, which was my chart of the week on the CBG podcast last week, we have broken a downward line of resistance, which is good to see. We've back tested it, and now we're beginning momentum to push up. So what price level should we look for? A couple different price levels, 4 in total. Maybe 5. So the first level, we're sitting at $95 right now, right? $100 is a psychological level. So I'd look for $100. And then the next two areas of resistance, kind of main areas or zones of resistance, are around 120 and 150. Again, whenever you're charting something, especially as volatile as an asset like this, it's not about picking a specific price point. It's a price range. You have to keep that in mind. So maybe Solana doesn't have resistance at 120. Maybe it's 120 and 58 cents. But the point is around 120, 150, you should see some resistance there. And then there's also this something called a Fibonacci retracement that we can look at that I took a look at. And we're not going to go into the details there. If you're not familiar, go Google it. But Fibonacci retracements, there's a golden zone around the 0.618 fib that's sitting at 190. So I would expect 100, 120, 150, 190, 200 is a psychological level, and then 260 is our all-time high. So those are kind of the price levels that you want to take a look at. But yeah, it's looking like the trend is turning. Our downward momentum's over. We've broken the downward line of resistance, and so long as Bitcoin continues positive momentum, it'll bleed bullishness into the rest of the market. We can expect an upturn here in Solana. So that's what I got. You got any questions on that?
When's Bitcoin going to hit 200,000?
October 5th, 2035.
I feel that's a little too positive. Shitcoin ain't doing nothing. But thank you. So, branching off of that, let's talk about accumulation here, CBG. The crypto market continues
and how much stress you've been accumulating as the emotional retail investor.
I can't help it. It's a genetic deformity in me. I'm emotional. I try and hide it. I try to tap into my Vulcan side and use logic. However, as the crypto market continues to show accumulation, what does this really mean? What does this really translate to for the average buyer? Is this a benefit, or is it misleading in any form? What's your input on this?
Yeah, so it's a great question. People on Twitter will often comment on accumulation or distribution. So there's a couple things you can look at as there's major changes in price patterns or changes in price appreciation or depreciation after you have big moves, okay? So when price is correcting and sort of going sideways, and there's something called sideways chop, people will often refer to it as either accumulation or distribution, okay? So let's first understand what accumulation means or distribution. So accumulation means that smart money is buying up within that price range. Distribution simply means that smart money is unloading to retail, okay, the retail emotional investor. The smart money is unloading and selling to the fools who don't know any better, and price is going to go lower. So how can we tell? So if my belief and many other logical, educated people's beliefs are that there's been accumulation at different points since we bottomed out. Yes, bottomed out at 33,000. How can we tell that? Well, the main way that I look at, and I can speak to a couple other items, the main thing I look at is we saw that when we corrected, and we corrected around, I think, 53% from top to bottom, we saw a flood of volume come in. So there was a lot of selling activity. A lot of people were selling, which led to that massive drop in price. After the selling stopped, okay, the volume that has taken place within this relative range that we've been doing sideways chop, the volume has sort of dipped off. So the extent to which there's been buy-sell orders has diminished. The other thing, so the volume dips off. So that's mainly what I'm looking at. The second thing that I'm considering when I'm looking at this is, well, we had a 53% drop, right? So at this point, with volume is so low and there's a lot of sideways chop, the market's either preparing for a downward move or an upward move. It's one or the other. Pick your side, okay? Well, my argument is we've already had a 53% down move. I'm extremely confident. I'm not going to put a percentage on it. I'm extremely confident that we're in a bull market, so it doesn't make any sense for me to believe, also based on other charts that I talk about on Twitter and YouTube, there's no reason for me to suspect that we're going to have a major move downward. There's always a probability for everything, but I don't have any strong suspicion for it. So with that being said, if the downside is extremely limited, there's sideways chop with low volume, there's accumulation taking place. The other two quick things that I'll speak to, and then let me know if this is making sense. The other two things you can look at, one is called the order book. So the order book exists for cryptos and stocks. It's essentially, it's really like a book, and it's itemized by people that express interest in either buying or selling at different levels, right? So for example, I could put in a limit buy, a buy at a specified price of say 42,500, and it's a crap ton of Bitcoin at that level. So it's going to take a lot of selling pressure to eat through at that order book. Same thing with on the sell side. I might have a huge sell order up at 50. Let's say I'm a whale, okay? I'm not a whale in Bitcoin, at least. I wish I was. But let's say I owned like 1 million Bitcoin and I had a sell order at $52,000. Well, there's so much sell side pressure there. That's what I'm asking for people to buy it at. It's going to take a ton of buy pressure to get through there. So you can also look at the order book to give you a clue in terms of if there's accumulation going on. And the last thing is there's on-chain metrics, which I don't follow as closely. I rely on others that I follow personally to kind of take a view when they share it to see what's going on. But the on-chain metrics will also show what big wallet addresses are doing and what the small little fish, the little retail guys and girls are doing. So those can all be breadcrumbs that I always say. Those can all be clues as well. Did any of that not make sense? Because I know that's a lot of information. I don't know if the volume and the price correction comment made sense, because that's really the biggest thing I look at.
No, that absolutely makes sense. No, I definitely understood that, so thank you.
The other thing, I'm glad it made sense. The other thing I wanted to comment on, though, just to make sure that I'm being clear, is when I do say sideways chop, some people get really irritated because they expect sideways chop to be this perfect horizontal line. Sideways chop can have an angle to it. It can go slightly down or slightly up. So I know that I was getting some saltiness a couple months ago with H-bar when it was consolidating prior to its move all the way up to its all-time high of 58 cents. I had one uneducated individual who was arguing with me that it wasn't accumulation, and I just left it alone. But the point is that the price movement was sort of moving a little down, but it was very choppy on low volume. And lo and behold, what do you know? There was accumulation going on, and we had a huge move up to 58 cents. So it's not a perfect line necessarily.
No, the sideways chop definitely makes sense. I wouldn't think that when you're accumulating, nothing is going to be perfect in terms of a straight line. So in my naivety, I never imagined it to actually be a straight line. To me, it makes sense that it would vary a little bit. So yes, I do understand that.
But that's how people get weeded out too, just to let you know. Like when things are just uninteresting and it's just going sideways, and then it goes up, and then it comes back down, and it goes back up, and it comes back down. Like people just who are emotional, this is the process that I've spoken to for like the past year and a half. Like this weeds people out. This is why most people are not successful in this market. I think CryptoBringer, you're starting to slowly, like just getting a little grain of sand there. You're starting to slowly understand why most people just are not as successful at this, because there's just so much volatility, and you really need to be well equipped and knowledgeable to be able to sort through all this stuff. And even then, you're still going to make mistakes, but it's better to be informed and educated on this stuff.
Yeah, but also at the flip side of that, not to have paralysis by analysis as well, where you're constantly you're holding on to things for too long.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep, I agree.
And you know, flipping the table a little bit to another topic, and this really has to do with, I don't know if it's fear, I don't know if it's governmental control when we look at this, but I was reading articles on the crypto ATMs becoming illegal in the UK. Mm-hmm. FCA warns crypto ATM operators shut down machines or face enforcement action. Uh-huh. FCA also states people should be prepared to lose all of their money as crypto is unregulated. So I mean, I find this to be completely surprising regression rather than progression by the UK, in spite of what the rest of the world is doing. And do you feel that? What do you think of this in terms of signs of control, or signs, or is this a sign of lack of education on the behalf of the UK government,
or all of the above? It's really, the way I view it is, so first off, as a technician, I just want to let you know, because I have text messages once in a while back and forth with the crypto father, the crypto daddy. Crypto daddy.
Please don't.
I've had some text messages, and
I got the text message today too.
Dad, so I do have a commonality with Dad in the sense that sometimes I can be very long-winded, and he can too. Like I think there's a commonality there. But he'll go off on his like tangent of blah 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 blah, and I'll just be like, yeah, I just look at a chart and it tells me everything I need to know. I don't care about all this other shit. So all this stuff. First off, I just want to say, I want to premise this by saying this is all noise to me. So I just laugh at it. But what I would say is, in terms of, let's talk about the fundamentals here. I would say that the technology itself, the way that the government is looking at it in this case is they can't get a handle on it. They just don't understand it, can't get a handle on it, and a lot about it is scaring them because it's so widespread, it's so easily adoptable. It's a very different form of technology that puts the control in the end user, the person. It gives power to the people, really. And I'm not, I really mean that. So I think a lot about it is very scary. And I think that those in charge are they're really nervous about the implications this could have on the financial system, on banks. And many people are just uneducated. I'm sure there are many government officials, I feel certain about this, many government officials who really have no fundamental understanding whatsoever, Elizabeth Warren, and they will hop on an agenda so that they can sort of stay in power from those who support them. Okay, so that's my view of it. She's
absolutely ridiculous.
Oh, she's just... I don't know what to say on that because it's nonsensical. But in terms of what's going on in the UK, that's really my thoughts on it. But let me just say this. You said that people could be prepared. This is the part I laugh at. people could be prepared to lose all their money as crypto is unregulated. You like the genie is out of the bottle, as they say. Like, you can't stop this technology now. You can regulate it all you want, but if I take my crypto and put it on a hard wallet, it's mine, right? I just have to find an exchange to transact with it. If I have crypto on my wallet, people can interchange between each other. It's peer-to-peer. I don't need a bank or a financial institution in that case. So the fact that they come out and say you can lose all your money just shows how disingenuous. I don't think it's a lack of education. I think they're being very disingenuous by saying that. They know that's not true.
Well, it's not necessarily surprising, right? And then meanwhile, the complete opposite, you have the city of Austin, Texas in the U.S. They want to conduct a quote-unquote fact-finding study on how the city can adopt Bitcoin and crypto-related policies. And we're starting to see other states start trying to figure out ways that they can accept crypto as tender. So progress is actually starting to continue, or start to pick up and then continue in the U.S. The regulation's still murky, though U.S. President Joe Biden has basically greenlit the existence of crypto in the U.S., and the Federal Reserve is going to explore if the central bank should create its own cryptocurrency. So that is something that is extremely interesting. I find that to be a positive progression rather than a regression. We still have the ridiculous SEC and XRP thing going on, but that's a whole other story. So what are your thoughts on the actual positivity that we're starting to see in the U.S.?
Well, first off, let me comment on the last point you made. The Federal Reserve is not exploring creating a form of cryptocurrency. Maybe that's what you read, but that's not true. What they're doing is...
I was shocked by it when I read it.
Yeah. No, they're not creating their own form of cryptocurrency. What they are, because that would involve blockchain technology. That's not what they're doing. They're not looking to create a finite supply of digital value within the ecosystem. What they are doing, and the way that that we could do a whole podcast episode on this, but the way the country is going, if you look at the little changes that have taken place over time, again, I just sort of wrap my head around various podcast platforms and really educate myself in my free time. But we're moving more towards a socialist form of government and society. And so the reason I say that, or where that's going, is the Federal Reserve or the government is looking to use a digital dollar. That's what we're really talking about here. And a digital dollar is not a form of cryptocurrency. The digital dollar, literally, all it is a digital representation of a dollar. That's all it is. And it's actually very frightening because it gives total transparency and control to the government over your funds. You'll have a digital wallet. They can put money in, take money out. They can see every single transaction that you do. So the thing that sucks with fiat is you can't track it. That's why it's really dirty money. So the government loves the idea of having a digital dollar because they'll have more control, and the government loves having more and more control. So that's really what we're talking about there.
But Elizabeth Warren says that crypto's the bad thing, not fiat.
Yeah, and it's funny when you hear things like that, because when they talk about money laundering, the silly thing, and it's like anyone educated would know, there's been so much money laundering that has taken place with the dollar and various forms of fiat currencies across the world. There was something that came out about money laundering back in like 19 or 20, and then an article came out the next week about how JP Morgan was fined like millions of dollars for money laundering. Okay, so the money laundering example is so old and so archaic, but you know what you have is the majority of people, and that's what we're hoping to do on this podcast platform. So if you appreciate it, make sure you drop the like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Click the bell icon. What we're doing on this channel is aiming to educate you. Well, a little bit of humor here. But we're looking to educate you because when these narratives are given out to the general public, most people, okay, do not understand cryptocurrency technologies. I feel like I've spoken to this before. I spoke to this on my podcast actually last week. So I'm an actuary, and I work with very, very, very intelligent people. A lot of people who are more gifted and intelligent than I am. Okay, I'm not going to argue that. But I work in a really niche field with a lot of smart people. But just because they're smart does not mean that they understand cryptocurrency. I can tell you that for a fact after talking to someone who is much higher up than me and just mentioning it and having maybe a 60-second conversation with him. It was very evident he does not understand cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. So the point is that people will gravitate, people who are uneducated will gravitate towards these news articles because they have nothing else to go on. They haven't done their due diligence, right? Probably don't have the time. They have families, they have other commitments. They haven't had the time to dig in. But you really need to look out for stuff like this because these disingenuous articles and the way that the politicians come at this, they can really alarm you and scare you unnecessarily if you're not well informed and haven't studied this market religiously like I have.
I absolutely agree with that. I wondered as I was reading the article if they had it wrong themselves about cryptocurrency and not what you had mentioned. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future.
Yeah, and that's how little they know. They're referring to a digital dollar as cryptocurrency. It's ridiculous. It's not cryptocurrency. It's literally a digital US dollar. That's all it is. That's literally all it is. It's just a digital representation of it.
Yep.
So just doing away with paper money, just not going to be any paper money someday. It's going to be a thing of the past.
Well, no, for all the germaphobes, that'll be a good thing.
But so, think about and think about we can save this for a future episode. I think this would be a good topic. I think you should make a note of this, CryptoBringer. But real quick, one thing I wanted to hit on with this, and we can get into it, podcast down the road. One thing that's scary about this, if you think about it, is if you just have a digital representation of what the government says you have, okay, and you have an electronic wallet, an e-wallet. So theoretically, okay, first off, you don't need banks. But secondly, I'm sure there'll be a use case for banks because the banks are in bed with the politicians. So there'll be a use case. But if you think about it, the government, if they have access to your e-wallet, they can go out and debit and credit your account. So if you've done something wrong, quote unquote wrong, and you're not a good citizen, why can't they just penalize you and take $100 out of your checking account? Why can't they? If you are part of what happened in Canada, if you're part of protests that they don't like, why can't they just shut off access to your e-wallet so you can't access your funds? It's a pretty scary thing. But conversation for another day. It's all about control. Control.
No, I absolutely agree. I find that thought absolutely terrifying. Exactly what happened in Canada. I mean, they completely shut it off. And to a lesser extent, look how what's happening across the world right now with shutting everything off with access in the Russia. I mean, it's just people just magically can turn this off, and now you don't have access to the money. And while obviously Russia needs to be punished, it's kind of scary that folks can also do that. And when you start moving to a more digitalized version of currency, how much more control can be exerted over you?
Do you know the funny thing that Elizabeth Warren hasn't pointed out? I'm not sure if she just has selective memory, but it's actually a
for
fact.
Her agenda? No.
It's actually a fact that there were millions of dollars donated to Ukrainian citizens through Bitcoin. And there were publications of people's accounts speaking to the fact, and I think we might have hit on this, and I think we actually sort of hit on this. We hit on this in the last podcast, yeah. So, I mean, there were people saying, like, we got by because of these donations, but somehow that got left out of the conversation. But,
No, because it clearly could have been laundered and was illegal. So
of course.
Yeah. So anyway, now that we've discussed that, we have yet another high priority topic to come into play here.
Very conflicted on this one.
Interesting. Best 80s cartoon to have ever come out. CBG, your thoughts?
So I'm not going to be long-winded. I'm just going to say this is a really rough one. And the perspective I'm giving on favorite 80s cartoon is now as an adult. So when I've gone back in my 20s or 30s, yes, 30s, folks. I've watched some of these cartoons in my 30s and gone through them. In my 20s and 30s, when I've gone back through the 80s cartoons, which ones stick out the most to me? And I think there are two main ones, He-Man and G.I. Joe, which I was not a big G.I. Joe person growing up as a kid. So it's really a toss-up between G.I. Joe and He-Man, and if I had to pick between those two, I think I would pick He-Man only because there were more episodes. It was a lot longer, although I really loved going back and watching G.I. Joe. Fantastic cartoon. So I'm going to go with He-Man. I'm going with He-Man. Very solid cartoon.
That is surprising.
Uh-huh.
So I looking at it as an adult, I still go with the one I liked as a kid.
Course.
I just can't get away from it. But G.I. Joe has a lot of interesting parallels and ties into what we still see going on in the world today.
Yeah.
Had the Crypto Babe watch part of the episode with Shipwreck, where, you know, the psychedelic one where he's taken captive by Cobra and all the people start melting, and I was like,
I remember that. Yeah.
I said this messed me up a little bit as a kid watching this. I was like, oh god, I was like, all the people kept melting. You know, a bunch of our friends and I still talk about that to this day. But for me, I mean, yeah, you got He-Man there, yeah, you had G.I. Joe there, but for me, it's just hands down to this day Transformers. There's
of course
no doubt about it.
I knew that was coming.
It's always it's got to be Transformers for me, from the artwork to the crazy screw ups that they had in the cartoon. He-Man, I watch an interesting YouTube show that talks about the various histories to the 80s paraphernalia and cartoons and whatnot. So it's interesting to see what happened with He-Man. But for me, with Transformers, hands down, the Transformers movie, which was, again, a huge marketing
one of my all-time
ploy.
favorite movies. I mean,
But it was a marketing ploy.
Yeah,
All it was to push out the old Transformers, to push in the new Transformers. And they killed off the leader, Optimus Prime, and parents wrote in because children such as CryptoBullGod cried in the movie theater because their hero died, and no one understood. Meanwhile, CryptoBringer sat there with his jaw hanging open going, he's not dead, he's not dead. No, he was really dead. So they wrote in, and at the same time, what was interesting was they were creating the G.I. Joe movie, and they killed off the leader in the G.I. Joe movie. Once they saw all these letters pouring in, they threw a little one-liner in at the end saying, oh, no, he's okay. He's out of his coma now. Everything's okay. He took a snake bite to the heart. Duke died.
They showed blood.
Blood?
Yeah.
There was more than just blood. That dude had, like... He's dead.
But it's funny when you think about it. They actually showed blood in the cartoon.
They also showed Transformers blowing up with just one shot versus when you went and watched the cartoon.
That's
true.
It's
called, we had to push the making of the new toys. So that's what I would say.
I'm curious. So obviously I knew you were going to say that. It was no surprise.
Yeah, no surprise.
So apparently I surprised you.
Yep, you did.
But let me ask you this, because I don't know... I'd guess He-Man, but what is your second favorite 80s cartoon? What's a runner-up? I would guess He-Man, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I don't know. See, I loved Voltron as a kid, but I can't. That's not going to be it. Yep. And I loved Thundercats as a kid. But
Thundercats was very close for me as well. I love Thundercats.
One cartoon that didn't make the list for us. What cartoon did not make the list for us that we haven't even mentioned yet that still exists and are making new episodes to this day?
80s cartoon?
Mm-hmm.
They're still making episodes to this day?
Mm-hmm.
Probably some form of Transformers. There's been 5,000 forms of Transformers.
No. I mean, it's the original show.
Well, I saw the He-Man remakes. I thought that stuff was good. I saw that on Netflix. That was very good.
So to give you a hint, this show never stopped.
That's impossible. Cartoon. No, wait. Give me a second. It never stopped?
Mm-hmm.
Did we watch it?
We did.
Stop.
This is quite literally on on the very end of the 80s, but it still qualifies because it's in the 80s. Do you give up?
I have no clue what you're talking about.
The Simpsons.
Oh, get out. This is a 9. See, I think of that as 90s.
December 17th, 1989. I just
okay. Yeah, see, you're talking 14 days before 19.
But I remembered 15. That it was in the 80s somehow. I just remembered that it was in 89, but like neither one of us mentioned it. But for me, I think it's going to have to be He-Man and G.I. Joe were just neck and neck for me. I mean, I probably He-Man and then G.I. Joe.
And then followed by Thundercats? Or Voltron?
Yeah, I think so. I would say that would have to be it.
Yeah, if I had to have guessed, I would have said He-Man as your number 2. So, okay.
Yeah, and you didn't mention, which I thought you would, was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
See, that's 90s.
You used to watch, December 14th, 1987.
Okay. I love Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. See, I thought that was 90s.
You were a much larger fan than I was, and I really enjoyed it, but that didn't crack the top 5 for me either. I thought it would for you, and I didn't think X-Men was 80s.
No, that's 90s. If you put a list of 80s cartoons in front of me, all the stuff we watched, I would be really hard pressed to give you like my top 5. Like that would be really tough. It'd be very difficult.
Yeah.
Because we used to watch a lot of cartoons. Lot of cartoons, a lot of Nintendo. Lot of cartoons and a lot of Nintendo.
There was a lot of that. So, CBG, before we go, I want to share this with you.
Of course.
And this is running off script here. Because this just happened this week.
You looked up CryptoBringer on Pornhub?
Not yet, but I am going to.
I'm going to be joining you, so go ahead.
Remember, folks, CryptoBringer. What kind of magical pornography will you get on Pornhub? Oh, dear God. So, somewhat in the same vein, I had some people come up to me this week. And they look, man, we can trust you. We have to ask you because we don't know what this term means. And I went, oh, God, this should be good. And they're talking really low. What does tossed salad mean?
Oh, my God.
And I'm like, and I looked at them, I'm like, I know it has to, does it have to do with the female nether regions? And I went, no. We all have this region. So I said, I'm not, and they kept pressing, and I was,
This is at work?
I'm not going to say where it was because it's not where you would think.
Okay.
Let's put it that way.
All right.
And they said, well, and I did tell them kind of what it was, but I said, look, you're going to have to figure this out on your own and find it. Look up Chris Rock's video on YouTube about it.
I don't know if I've watched it.
Chris Rock tossed salad.
I don't know if I've ever watched it.
On YouTube. Go ahead, look it up. It's like a 2-minute clip. I said, myself and my buddies laughed about it so hard in college we were crying, and that was sober when we watched it. And
well, now I definitely need to check it out. I haven't watched
it. There were not many times that we were sober laughing that hard in college, and that was one of them. So what I'm going to do is I am now going to send this to CBG in text message so he may also watch it. So anyway, that's what I wanted to add in at the end of the podcast.
That's a hell of a way. That's a hell of a way to end the podcast. So anyway, getting off the subject of tossing salad. Yeah, that does it for another episode of the CryptoBroz broadcast. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Make sure you hit the like button, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel. We're always going to be here looking to lock in those financial freedom gains in this exciting world of cryptocurrency. So until next time, I am CBG.
And I am the CryptoBringer who prefers syrup. And you'll know what that means when you watch the Chris Rock clip.
Jesus. Ooh, yeah. Jesus. That was a hell of a way to end the podcast.